So hello everyone, my name is Pauline Rohdich and I am the founder of Just Pause. I'm just going to show you my little hashtag foam. It's back to front there on your screen now, but just pause. So I invite people, adults and children, to hit the pause button. Maybe not something that you're very familiar with doing on your devices, but it's absolutely important that we all take a little pause break every so often just to check in with ourselves and really, understand what's going on around us effectively. It's a great chance to breathe. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about happiness. I do a lot of things. I help clients with levels of happiness. I'm a happiness trainer. I teach yoga and meditation. In fact, I'm in my yoga room right now. I help people to understand their mind. I work as a hypnotherapist, so I help people to create different habits, to improve their thinking, to improve their performance in sport, in studies. I help people to overcome anxiety because most of our problems are in our mind. So really, I'm like a mind programmer, ultimately. And I want you to pause for a second before I start into this happiness training with you. And I want to say to you straight away that you are an amazing human and you have so much potential. And there are so many things that you can achieve in your life when you believe it. So I help people to believe in themselves. And I want to start this conversation with you to help you understand the importance of believing in yourself, in understanding who you are. I'm a mother to a 14-year-old boy, and I understand all the issues, the constraints, some of the problems potentially that young people have today. So I'm very clued in with that. And today's conversation is about saying yes to happiness and understanding that happiness is an inside job. What do I mean by that? Happiness is your essential nature. It is basically who you are at your core. The happiness comes from inside us. The reason so many of us suffer is because we think that happiness is outside of ourselves. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people say, I'll be happy when I get something. So for example, maybe you've said, I'll be happy when I get a new PlayStation. I'll be happy when I start, learning this particular instrument or going to these classes, or I'll be happy when I'm friends with this person in my class, or I'll be happy when I pass my exams, or I'll be happy when my parents acknowledge me and tell me how wonderful I am. I'd be happy when, I go to the disco, whatever it is. What that's doing is it's pushing happiness outside of ourselves. And that would mean that we'd have very little control. If you think about it, and I really want you to think about it, when you say those kind of things, I'll be happy when I get, the new clothes, or I'll be happy when this friend, invites me out to the party, or I'll be happy when I pass my exams. There's almost like a waiting game. And while we're in that phase of waiting, we can often feel like we're not in control. But that is what we would call a myth of happiness. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's very important for you to understand that you bring your happiness to the situation, because the kind of happiness I'm talking about is an inner state, a place where you feel peace and a sense of well-being. Now, this is not to say that you're not going to experience other emotions such as anger, frustration, or sadness or grief. If you lose somebody or something, those are normal emotions that everybody experiences. And by all means, it's okay to acknowledge those feelings. In fact, it's very important that you do. But I also want to emphasize that happiness is already there too. It is there, but it's sometimes buried underneath many of the things that we say to ourselves. So I am going to talk to you a little bit about the mind in just a second. And I want to point out at this stage why many of us are unhappy and why many of our young people are unhappy. Most of our young people today, and many adults do this as well because they haven't been educated on not doing it, we have a terrible habit, a bad habit of comparing ourselves to others. wishing that we either looked like somebody else, or perhaps we're as talented as somebody else in a particular sport or activity, or that we got the same kind of grades as somebody else, or we might be comparing ourselves with our friends or some of the people that we are in school with or in college with that may appear to have more money than we do, or appear to have a happier life than we do. I want to point out, we don't know for certain what another person is thinking. We can never know that. And often people pretend that they're happier than they actually are. But when you are comparing yourself to somebody else, what that means is your focus and your attention is on somebody else. That means your focus and your attention is not on you. And that means that you're not using your time wisely, your energy wisely, or your creativity wisely. Because if you're comparing yourself to how somebody else looks, what they have, or who they are, your focus is away from who you can become. All you really need to remember is to place your attention on you, insofar as when you can really consider what it is you want for your life, then you have an opportunity, when you're focused on yourself, of coming up with ways that you can create that reality for you and use your natural creative ability to create what you actually want. So you're more focused on what you want rather than on what you don't want. You see, most people are unhappy because they're focusing on what they think they don't have by comparing themselves to their friends or other people that they might know. And one of the secrets to happiness and having that inner belief in ourselves, that sense of peace and joy, is by being grateful for what we have, rather than focusing on the scarcity of something in our lives. When we focus on what we already have, we actually increase our joy. Just think about it for a second. You have so much that you can be grateful for in your life right now. If you're watching this video, it means you have some form of a device in which to watch it. Therefore, you can be grateful for whatever device you have in your hand. You can be grateful for the very fact that you're alive and well and breathing and that you're healthy. You can be grateful for the people in your lives. And even though sometimes the adults in your life don't actually know some of what I'm sharing with you, because they really don't, because I work as a therapist and I work in helping other people, most of them are adults that don't know this. So I want you to understand that happiness is your responsibility. I know as a younger child, maybe listening to this, your happiness, you might think, is up to your parents or your older siblings or even up to your friends. But if you can learn this now, that you can control your happiness by the way you speak to yourself, by how you use your energy, by what you're focusing on, what you're putting your attention on. If you're putting your attention on the things that you want to achieve in your life, such as doing well in your activities, whether that be sport or excelling in the use of an instrument, whether you're learning the violin or the drums or whatever it is, or singing, dancing, playing sport, hurling, camogie, football, and so on. My son loves golf and basketball. Those are his two favorite sports. And he knows that if he practices those individual sports, he's going to get better at them. But if he was looking at what everybody else is doing, it means he's not paying attention to what he needs to do in his own life. And that's really what I want to say to you about this. Don't be comparing yourself to other people. Create the life that you want by paying attention to your natural gifts and talents, because you have natural gifts and talents. You are unique. There is nobody else can do the things the way you can do them. And I want you to remember this for the rest of your life, that you've been born with unique gifts and talents. And sometimes you can be a lot older before some of those gifts and talents really come into play in your life. But I want you to really think about right now in your life, what are the things that bring you joy? What do you really enjoy doing? What is it that you do that you don't suddenly look at the clock, that you would do it forevermore for the rest of your life? And that's usually an indication of the kind of work that you can do later on in your life. Not always, but often, where you can earn a living from. This is a great guide. You already know the things that bring you this joy. I want to share something with you that the scientists have discovered about happiness. And this is important for you to understand. We all have what they call a happiness set point. So if you're familiar with the heating system in your house, and you know you've seen a thermostat control. So in the house, we would adjust our thermostat control or set it at a particular temperature so that the temperature in the room will just fluctuate a couple of maybe degrees either side of what we've set it at. So that's what we mean by a set point. Our happiness has a set point too. If you can imagine a circle, like a pie chart, you might be familiar with pie charts from your studies. If you draw a line down the middle, so 50% of your happiness set point and my happiness set point is determined by our genetics, meaning our DNA. We're born either dreary or cheery. Now there's some good news coming. 10%, so take a little slice of that, 10% of that pie chart is relating to our happiness being dependent on our circumstances, the things we have. You know, depending on your situation, all of your gadgets, for example, will be dependent on your gadgets, dependent on your ability to learn in school, the grades that you're getting in school, the friends that you are hanging out with. As we get older, adults are often, their happiness in terms of circumstances might be dependent on the job that they're doing or not doing, the car they're driving, the house they live in. So why I'm saying this to you is that most people, especially the adults, they think that their happiness depends on the car they're driving, the results they've got in their exams, the kind of college education that they have, the clothes they wear, the people they hang out with. That only equates to 10% of your happiness. And that's where most people, unfortunately, spend most of their time. But the remaining 40% of that pie chart, so 50% is determined by your DNA, by your parents, 10% by your circumstances, and the remaining 40% is based on your habits, your beliefs, and your thoughts, how you think about yourself. Now, just over 20 years ago, there was another amazing study, the study of epigenetics. And this is when they discovered that when we change the way we think about ourselves, we can change our DNA. So we're able to alter our genetic makeup, which means we have control over 90% of our happiness. So what am I talking about here? I am actually talking about happiness habits. And one of the habits of happiness is understanding how your mind works. So here is a lesson in how your mind works. Your mind, it's split into two parts. You have a conscious mind, where you make your decisions from, the information comes in through the conscious mind. Your subconscious mind is at the back of your head, effectively. They say it's at the base of the spine. And this is where we gather all of our beliefs. But most of us, and in most cases, the subconscious mind has all of the beliefs we hold about ourselves. So when we were very young children, we would have allowed in certain thoughts. And if somebody corrected us, or if somebody told us that we were not good at something, or even if a teacher corrected us about a mistake we might have made in our mathematical exam or an assessment in the classroom, or perhaps if we were standing up in class and we faltered over something that we were reading and made a mistake, and if our fellow students laughed at us or the teacher corrected us and we got embarrassed, we may have internalized that to mean that we're not good enough, or it made us feel that we were silly or useless or a loser. And I know this has happened to a lot of people because I've been treating many adults. And when we unravel the mystery as to why they feel as an adult that they're not good enough, it often goes back to a situation like that may have happened in our own home, where a sibling a brother or sister, criticized us, or a parent criticized us, or the teacher criticized us. So I want you to understand that this is how many of our beliefs that we hold about ourselves began, because we allowed in something that was said to us, and we actually internalized that, and we gave it meaning. And what the meaning we gave it is probably not something that was very helpful to us. Because if somebody criticized us for our reading, if a teacher criticized us or corrected us about something that we did in error in class, and we gave meaning to that, in other words, we might have said, I'm not as good as my friend here. I'm useless. I'm no good at that. I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to stand up in public again and speak. And many people have done that. And so as adults, when they have to go out there into the world and speak in front of a group of people at a meeting, for example, or to do a talk from a stage, they're terrified, because they think, even if it's 20 years later in their lives, they think because they made a mistake when they were 11 or 7 or 14 in a classroom environment, that is how it's going to be for the rest of their lives. And I want you to hear me now loud and clearly. That is not true. You don't have to give it that kind of meaning. And it's absolutely vital that you don't. So that would present itself as a negative thought pattern for you. I want to teach you something here. The average person thinks 60,000 thoughts per day, and often more. That means you're thinking about one thought per second. 95% of what you're thinking is something that you thought yesterday, the day before, last week, and maybe a few months ago. So we repeat these same old thoughts over and over and over. It's the repetition of thinking in this way that creates the life that we have, and it will determine whether we're happy or unhappy in most cases. 80% of what you're thinking is negative and untrue. And then you might wonder why you feel tired, or you feel really, unhappy, because the negative thinking robs you of your energy, and then you haven't got the energy perhaps to study what you need to study, or even to enjoy time with your family or your friends for that matter. You can be irritable and impatient and angry and frustrated, and you might be lashing out. That is because many of your thoughts are negative and not supporting you. But the most important thing I want you to note here is that they're untrue. Many of us are telling ourselves lies, and we need to become really, really good at working out the truth from the untruth. And you can do this. Every time you change your negative thinking to a positive one, and repeating it over and over by saying things to yourself, the opposite of what you might be saying. So you might be saying, I'm a loser, I'm not good enough, I'm not as good as, because you remember what I talked about when you're comparing yourself to others, you're looking at how other people are doing and you're internalizing that. And then you have these silent thoughts, I'm not good enough. So if you're thinking that you're not good enough, then often the actions that you take in your life are going to reflect that thought. So then you might take action where you are maybe aggressive, or you are not doing your homework, or you're not applying yourself to the things that you know you need to do. So you're actually denying yourself of having the very things that you want. The one thing about your mind, it always will do what it thinks you want it to do. So if you're saying to yourself, I cannot do this, then your mind will convince you and remind you that you can't do that. If you're saying over and over, I can do something, then in time, that is exactly what you will create in your life. That is the reality that you will create in your life. Your self-talk is really important. This is what you're saying to yourself over and over, and everybody talks to themselves. Your self-talk will determine how much you like yourself. We call this self-esteem. And depending on how much you like yourself, and by the way, it's really important to like yourself. In fact, it's important to love yourself. And the reason for that is when you truly love yourself, not because of how you look, I'm not talking about your appearance, but when you really love yourself and know that you're doing your best and are committed to doing the things that bring you happiness, such as what I'm talking about now, deliberate in your self-talk, deliberate in how you speak to yourself, meaning that you are going to, if you feel and you notice that you're saying something that is criticizing you, or maybe you're judging yourself, that immediately you stop it, just cancel out that negative thought, and you input something positive, such as, I am enough, I'm more than enough, I love who I am, every day I'm improving. Every day I'm getting better and better at liking myself, loving myself. My confidence is growing daily. I am amazing. And this is how you need to start talking to yourself, because you don't want to wait till you're 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. The oldest person that came to me for therapy was 72 years of age, and he had spent decades of his life living in misery inside because he didn't believe in himself, and he missed so many opportunities in his life because he didn't believe in himself. So this is why I'm sharing this with you now. As a young person, do not spend your life criticizing yourself, or others for that matter, because even when you criticize another person, it makes you feel bad. So if you want to feel good and joyful and happy, start by praising yourself. When you learn to praise yourself, it's almost like you're canceling out anybody else's criticism of you. And you don't have to argue with these people. You can praise yourself and immediately elevate yourself to a much happier place of joy. But it might help you as well to know that as human beings, we are programmed or hardwired for negativity. And it actually goes right back to our caveman ancestors, where we needed to remember the negative things, such as we needed to remember where the poisonous berries were so that we wouldn't eat them and die. We needed to know where the wild animals were hanging out so we didn't put ourselves in position to be eaten and savaged by them. We needed to know that if we stepped outside of our boundaries as cavemen, that we may have been killed by another tribe. So we're hardwired, the ancient part of your brain is hardwired for negativity. So it's kind of normal to think negatively, but we have to override that, because who wants to be going around thinking negative thoughts day in, day out, hour in, hour out? It leads to low energy. It leads to living a miserable existence. And I know you don't want that. And I certainly don't want that for you. So this is what we have to do. We have to put the positive thoughts in. We have to be consciously thinking about being positive. We have to override the negativity. So even if people around us are complaining about the weather, or saying, oh, it's a miserable day, or I've loads of homework to do, or I don't like this teacher, or I don't like this subject, you can turn that into a positive. Now, this is something important to note here. It takes 3 positive statements to override 1 negative. So we've got to be really, really, committed to being positive. So if somebody complains about the weather, well, you can say, well, at least I have a lovely warm fire to sit beside, or at least I have a television to watch, or at least I have warm clothes to wear. Or you might say, the weather doesn't bother me, I can still go outside and kick a ball, or go for a walk, or take the dog for a walk. It's up to you. You have that choice and you have that ability. And the more you practice that, and the more you focus on all the good things in your life, what you're actually doing is you are changing the wiring in your brain. There's a study called neuroplasticity. In neuroscience, they recognized that we are able to change the structure of our brain and create new neural pathways. This is really good news. Every time you pick up an instrument and practice your instrument, you're reinforcing the neural pathways to make yourself really good at that. It's almost like you're developing the memory. And so when you pick up that instrument a few days later, immediately it's easy to go over whatever you were learning a couple of days earlier. We must practice positive thinking to have positive results. This will increase our happiness. This will increase our joy. I've made a few notes. I just want to look at them to make sure that I'm helping you in the best way possible. Whatever we put our attention on grows stronger in our lives. That's what I'm talking about here. So if you want a different outcome, You have to tell yourself different things. And I would really encourage you, while it might seem a little bit silly at first, or it might seem a bit crazy at first, to start looking in the mirror in the morning at yourself. And I want you to praise yourself out loud if you can. I want you to look in that mirror and I want you to say, I am amazing. I am good enough. I have everything that I need. I create my own joy. I'm responsible for my happiness. I'm confident. I'm amazing. I can do this. And that's exactly what you will create. And you will have changed the physical structure of your brain, and your mind will support you, because you are now turning any negative thought into a positive one, and you're going to have positive results as a result of that. So I hope that's helpful. It's really important to challenge those thoughts and not to give meaning to the things that people have said to you in the past that may have seemed critical. You can change that. You can turn that around. You have the power to do that. Don't wait for somebody else to praise you. You can do that for yourself. And a final reminder, do not compare yourself to anybody else, because when you're doing that, it means you're not creating your own life. And you have been gifted with many skills, many talents. You are an absolute unique being. Even as a child or a young adolescent or a young adult, I want you to know this. There is nobody on this planet that can do things the way you can. You're like a fingerprint. There's no two fingerprints the same. There are no two snowflakes the same. You are unique. You are needed. You are necessary. And we need what you have. The world needs what you have. And it's up to you to focus on you and bring happiness to everything that you do. And that might mean you have to teach the people in your own family some of this information. So I hope that's helpful to you, and put a big smile on your face. And smiling is contagious. Happiness is contagious. So why not choose to be the spreader of joy in your world? Thank you for listening to me, and have a wonderful life, because that's what you're meant to have, is a wonderful, beautiful life. Enjoy it.